Do you know what, Shaq? There's nothing like a knee-jerk reaction on the back of a small
that's what we
sample
do.
size, right?
That's
so
what we do best here, Mark.
of
That's what we
course,
do
this is ESPN FC in a nutshell. So as a result of what happened at the weekend from Friday through to Monday, we're going to tell you everything about the Premier League, who's going to win it, top scorers. And we're going to start 3 segments today. We're going to do that. We're going to look at everything else that's happening around Europe today. A lot of transfer speculation. That's in the middle part of today's ESPN FC Live. And then have a bit of fun at the end with an X or Y. Shaka has to choose. But we're going to start with the Premier League. Biggest surprise for you from the weekend, Shaq, was what?
Oh, biggest surprise, and I think there were a few. I'm going to say probably Brighton's win away to Everton. I thought, kind of given the changes, managerial changes over the summer, I really wanted to see how Brighton would start. And while Everton have their issues, I didn't expect a 3-0 win on the opening day of the season. That, and I'll probably throw Leicester in there. Again, managerial change for Leicester City as they lose their manager who brought them up against a team that I thought has a realistic shot of finishing top 4. And while they were second best for a lot of it, I thought Leicester responded really well in getting a draw. Deserved or not, I guess we can discuss. But again, just kind of given the changes from Leicester, I thought they'd struggle this season. But made a decent showing of the opening game at home to Spurs.
It could have been 5-0 down at half time.
Oh, easily could have been. Easily could have been.
Right.
But
Crazy.
But they weren't. And they kind of took advantage of Spurs' wastefulness. And just as a little bit of a precursor, I have a feeling it's not going to be the last time I mentioned Spurs were in during this chat.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Brighton, by the way, because there's one player, and he actually was with your former team, but they let him go because of the financial fair play and everything like that. Yankuba Minta. And I know he went off with a head knock, but this kid it could be an absolute star. He's fearless. In pre-season, he was outstanding. And I don't know what it is about Brighton. Tony Bloom's got this kind of secret method that he uses for identifying players. It's basically bring them in for a fee, which is a reasonable fee, and then give them a platform to showcase their ability and sell them on for a lot of money. Chelsea have kind of paid for Brighton's existence over the next 20 years or so. Which team?
By the way, let me also add Aston Villa. Listen, and I know we're talking about a team that finished top 4 last season.
Is this a good or a bad surprise for you?
No, this is a good surprise.
Okay.
I watched Villa away to West Ham.
Yep.
And I really wanted to see how Villa would fare this season. And my concern for them was primarily when Champions League football started, how that would test their squad. And we saw Newcastle struggle with that last season. So I kind of felt that maybe that was going to be the case for Villa again. But every time I watch Aston Villa play, I am amazed at the football that they are able to produce.
Good sign.
They went to West Ham on the weekend and controlled the game. And again, we will talk about great teams in the Premier League, and there'll be a lot of focus again on Manchester City and Arsenal, and rightly so. But Aston Villa just continue to amaze me in the kind of football they're able to produce on what is a shoestring budget by comparison to the other two that I just mentioned.
It's not like me to take half of the allocated 10-minute time for 7 questions on just one question. So let's move on swiftly to question 2. Which team let you down the most in the Premier League at the weekend?
And again, as I mentioned, Tottenham Hotspur. I love Postecoglou. I thought what we saw from Spurs, particularly in the first half of last season, really was a breath of fresh air for a club that had been struggling to produce that kind of football that their fans had been demanding for so long. Yes, okay, it fell off to the back end of last season, but coming in, I don't think anybody expected Spurs to be anywhere near the top 4. They're threatened for long periods. Starting this season, Postecoglou's second season in charge, I was expecting more, and maybe they delivered more, excluding the goals in the first half against Leicester. But then all of a sudden, Jamie Vardy scores that goal. Jamie Vardy, I have a feeling this is not the last time we're going to be speaking about him today. He scores that goal, and Spurs just didn't know how to react. They got this right hook. It rocked them, and they just looked unsteady for the rest of the game. And that for me was a big surprise, because if you are going to be competing at the highest end of the Premier League table, you have got to be able to manage games better. You have got to be able to concede goals and not simply go to pot. And I thought that's what Spurs did, and that was disappointing.
So Spurs aren't your Premier League team to beat. Who are?
My team to beat, I have Arsenal as winning this time around. I just wonder if Manchester City's kind of time is coming. In that some of their star players are starting to age out. Not a whole lot of movement in the transfer window, and I know there's still time to go, and I'm sure we'll be discussing that as well before we call it a day here. But I just feel that Arsenal continue to improve, continue to get better. My one caveat is that I don't feel they've addressed their biggest need, which is for an out-and-out striker. Even so, if they had, I would say without any hesitation that Arsenal go on to win it. It's with some hesitation that I think they just edge Manchester City, and that's more about City regressing than Arsenal, as I said, truly addressing their greatest need.
Which player impressed you the most at the weekend?
Jamie Vardy, as I mentioned again. How old is Jamie Vardy? 37?
74.
Yeah, I feel it's somewhere around there. Coming up from the Championship, and again showed kind of his feistiness, shall we call it, and that little kind of show of his badge and exchange with Romero. Took his goal really well. Could have, if not should have, had a second. And it shows that at the very least, he hasn't lost any of his passion. He's not the player that he was five years ago, but he's still a player that you have to have a plan for. And at his age, that's saying a lot. Added to that, I will join the chorus, albeit very early chorus, that we saw from Odegaard and Arteta around Bukayo Saka. The way he took his goal, had an assist to go with it. He has to have a big season if Arsenal are to go on and win the title. If this version of Arsenal, and again, I've expressed what they need most. We still have a few weeks left in the transfer window, but he has to have a big season, and it's been a very good start, albeit a one-game start. But as we established, it's never too early for us to get carried away on FC.
74 is twice 37, which is his age. We knew that. Anyway, didn't it? By the way, I've got two players for you from the weekend, and we're going to get through this a little bit quicker. Brian Mbeumo will be another season. He'll be a star for Brentford without Ivan Toney. He'll just get goals. And the other one is Onana, Aston Villa. That's a good signing.
Very good signing
from Everton, especially with Douglas Luiz going
early on. How good was that? Yeah.
Wow, what a header! Okay, we've done the player. What about the manager? Quickly, was there one? What about the Brighton manager? Are you going to give him the kudos this week?
I absolutely have to. Again, coming in with 31 years old, a young manager, taking
6 years younger than
right.
What's his name, Milner and Vardy?
Yeah, exactly. Listen, and coming in, given everything that we've seen from Brighton over the last couple of seasons under Potter and then to Zerbi, that is not an easy seat to take over. And while Brighton, by their standards of the last 3 or 4 years, were a little bit disappointing, particularly the back end of last season, what a start it was to this one. And credit to him for that.
So is there a correlation then, if he gets manager and Brighton get your biggest surprise, that Everton get your biggest disappointment at the weekend?
Yeah, Everton, again, my biggest disappointment. And it's difficult to know what to expect from Everton. And while yes, they kind of struggled by what you'd expect last season, I thought they started last season well, and then the points deduction, and they just couldn't get it back together. But this is a blow to start at home. The expectation around Everton is a whole lot more than losing on your own patch, 3-0 at that. Yeah, biggest disappointment.